Welcome back. It's good to see everybody again. Even though I don't see you, you see me. Want to let you know next week I will not be recording a video. The Bishop of Southern California has asked all of the pastors to take a Sabbath week, and he will be recording a full-length worship service that you can see starting on Friday. And just go to calpac.org/Sabbath and you'll be able to view that worship service. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers. If you're not able to be with your children, I hope you're at least able to talk with them on the phone or FaceTime, or in some way have a contact with them. And hope you're having a great weekend. Now, last weekend, in the night sky where we live in Southern California, the planet Venus was really bright. And then just this past week, we had a supermoon, which was huge. And those two things in the sky reminded me of the message and the passage that we're looking at this week in Philippians. And you'll understand that in just a moment. We are still in the second chapter of Philippians. And once again, you're going to see Paul addressing the Christians in ways that are very personal. So beginning with verse 12, "Therefore, my dear friends, as you have always obeyed, not only in my presence, but now much more in my absence, continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who works in you to will and to act in order to fulfill his good purpose. Do everything without grumbling or arguing, so that you may become blameless and pure, children of God without fault, in a warped and crooked generation. Then you will shine like them, or you will shine among them like stars in the sky, as you hold firmly to the word of life. And then I will be able to boast on the day of Christ that I did not run or labor in vain. But even if I am being poured out like a drink offering on the sacrifice and service coming from your faith, I am glad and rejoice with all of you. So you too, be glad and rejoice with me." A few years ago, I read a book about Paul authored by a scholar named N.T. Wright. He included an insightful description about the impact the gospel has on people. The gospel itself was designed to generate a new kind of people who would be eager for good works. In fact, the new kind of humanity that was brought to birth through the gospel was created for the specific purpose of good works. Paul's emphasis here is all about communities through whose regular practice the surrounding world is made a better place. The salvation you and I experience is not intended to just make us feel better about ourselves or just get us entrance into heaven, but to transform us into people who are set on improving the world. On this Mother's Day, I decided to share with you a small way that my mother encouraged others, and it all has to do with fudge. Every year at Christmas time, my mother made three kinds of fudge. A chocolate fudge, which she called $1 Million Fudge. A peanut butter fudge, which was always my favorite. And then a white fudge that had walnuts in it. I don't know how many batches of fudge she made every year, but I know that from Thanksgiving through Christmas, we always had fudge in the house. She also packaged portions of the fudge and gave it to people like our paper boy, the mailman, some other people that she wanted to give something special to. In fact, one day, just before Christmas break, one year, the brother of our paper boy was in my class in 6th grade, and he came to me and said, "Man, your mom makes the best fudge." Some small little way that my mother found to bless other people, and in a very small way to improve their lives, just through fudge. Work out your salvation with fear and trembling. When Paul wrote that, he didn't mean that you and I earn our salvation. That's not the case. You cannot earn your salvation. You already have it. Now, if you're working at a job and you come to the end of your pay period, you then receive a paycheck, which you earned through doing the work. Salvation is not like that. It's not compensation for doing the right things or for doing good. Salvation is a free gift. In response to salvation, you now have opportunities. Some might call them responsibilities, because you now have this great salvation in your life that is making an impact on you. In essence, Paul is saying, get busy and discover what that means. Clarence Jordan, in his Cotton Patch translation, worded it, carry on with your emancipation with a deep sense of reverence and responsibility. The working out exhortation is intended to encourage us to discover what that means. How has salvation impacted you? How have your priorities changed? How different is your life? Has it impacted how you spend your time or how you spend your money? Next week's Thursday Bible study will focus on the parable of the talents in Matthew chapter 25. And we're going to look at how those servants who were each given a responsibility by their master, their employer, responded to that responsibility. Now, also in this passage, Paul wrote a short phrase that probably haunts some people. He wrote, do everything without grumbling or arguing. That's pretty amazing. Everything? Really? Everything? If you think about what's included in everything, everything. What's excluded? Nothing. So Paul has given us a huge task, which is to be able to live our lives without grumbling or complaining. Now, I'm a world-class grumbler and complainer. But now, since I have that passage locked into my brain, anytime I start grumbling or complaining, that's what comes into my brain. Now, it doesn't always change right away, my activities. But that was Paul's exhortation. Even also in this passage, Paul had a harsh description of the world in which he and the Philippians were living. He called it a warped and crooked generation. Was Paul overstating his experience? Well, Seneca, who was a philosopher and an advisor to Nero, described the city of Rome as a sewer. He could think of no other way to portray the depravity of life in that city in his day. That was the world in which Paul was living. And even though Paul acknowledged the warped world around them, he urged the Christians in Philippi to shine like stars in the sky. And if you're shining, you have to think, well, what types of things might mar or dull your shining? And one of the answers is found in the text, when Paul urged them not to complain and not to argue. Instead, be glad and rejoice. A couple of other exhortations found in the New Testament, or actually in the Bible, that restates this. Psalm 19:14. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable to you, O Lord. Colossians 4:6. Let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how to answer everyone. Those are not easy exhortations to live in a practical, daily way, and yet that's part of what we're urged to do. The people who go through life complaining are people who live with a perpetual frown. The people who go through life rejoicing are people who are living with a perpetual smile. I've heard it said that it takes more muscles to frown than to smile. Now, I researched that and found that that is an unproven statement. But one thing I have noticed, the older you get, laugh lines are prettier than frown lines. Jesus said, "You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine Let it shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. Just this past week, Pope Francis tweeted, "It is not easy to live in the light. The light makes us see many ugly things within us, vices, pride, a worldly spirit. But Jesus tells us, take courage. Let yourself be enlightened because I save you." And he concluded his tweet with, "Let us not be afraid of Jesus' light." Jesus made you one of his stars to shine brightly in the universe. And so go forth and let your light shine. And let's conclude our time the way we do every week at Winchester Community United Methodist Church, when I say, "Who are the beloved?" and you respond with, "We are." And so, who are the beloved? Go and be the beloved.